Welcome to Frank and Honest, where we're sometimes frank and always honest. Our goal is to cultivate happiness through curious conversations. This voice you're hearing now is Ali.
This is Tiffany, or Tiff, but we are all about health, happiness, and having a good time. Welcome to Frank and Honest. Today we have two special guests with us today, Paul Lind and Cody Lind, which we're very excited to get started. It's kind of funny where we're at today because Paul and I we go way back to the INL days. It's kind of funny when I think back about this because Paul, you know, out at INL, you have all these super smart people doing nuclear research, right? And then you have like this small group of people that are those crazies that go out in the desert and run. And that's how I met you, Paul. That's how I met you and really got a lot more passionate about running. But it's kind of a little backstory there with all the crazies out in the desert, and it's kind of funny to sit here now and reflect on that. So, setting the stage today, where are you guys zooming in from?
I am out in Northern California basking in the sun. I got the winter mom watch. My mom's on that part of her life where she needs some extra care. So I got the January, February mom watch out here, and it's just terrible and 60 degrees and flowers blooming. And I sure wish I could be cold like where you are. Cody can tell where he's at.
Yeah. My setting is a little bit different as I'm in central Idaho in Ketchum, Idaho currently, as I just drove through a snowstorm to get on this Zoom call. But I have been basking in some spring skiing conditions up in the Sawtooths over the weekend, so no complaints for me as I'm still getting out in the mountains here in Idaho.
Nice.
But we should probably set the stage that home is Challis, Idaho for
Right.
both of us, really. That's where the heart of the heart is. Where the mountains are and where we'd love to be.
Yeah. We're actually heading to Challis this Friday, Saturday to do a job.
Mhm.
I heard that.
Yeah, it's one of those fun places where you're like, hey, yeah, sure, we'll drive forever to go work there. Why? Because
I'll have
it's
you check on
pretty.
my house.
Yeah,
Seriously.
totally. Happy to do so. It'll be a hoot. Chalice is awesome. I love it over there. Spending just a little bit of time, not nearly as much as you guys. You guys know that area so well, and the mountains, which we're gonna dive into. Um, but I'm so excited to have you guys here today because you two are unlike many other people that we've met, and I love that so much because, well, one, you got a little bit of crazy to be able to do the things that you do, right? But you love it, and the fun side of what you do is really one of the things we want to dive into. It's
Mhm.
really unique, the level of enjoyment that both of you guys take into doing what you're doing, and not just running, of course, but everything else. But we definitely want to dive into some of the running and the fun stuff and the family legacy as well that you have with with your grandpa or your dad in this case. But yeah, let's
Yeah, what's
jump in.
okay. So of course my stuff was all internet stalking here, and I really enjoyed over the last little bit, Paul and I are friends on Facebook. So of course the stories popped up recently of Cody running through some water and doing some stuff, and you guys are traveling all over. But first, what is so with this podcast, what we really enjoy doing is just talking to people who love doing what they're doing. I mean, we've had guests that are power lifters that lift with their sons, that she got into it because of her sons. We have other people who are into energy things and different sort of modality and whole health perspectives. And then you guys come up, and then, through internet stalking, I find out that you guys really, one of the main premises of running is to enjoy it. And a lot of people, when they think about running, they think they'd rather poke their eyes with a hot poker, right? Um, I'm more of the, hey, let's see how far we can go physically. But what draws you to running so much? What's that kind of that origin story to where you're like, hey, listen, I could do this. This is fun.
Let's have Cody tell the family origin on where this all started with Grandpa. Let's see how well he does.
Pop quiz.
Yeah, so I guess mine, I just grew up around ultra running and running in general. But it comes from a deep family history, both with my dad and my grandfather. and the Western States 100-mile endurance run, which starts in Olympic Valley, California, and finishes in Auburn, 100 miles through the Sierras. And originally it was a horse race, and uh, basically there was a guy by the name of Gordy Ainsley whose horse went lame, and my grandfather followed him. He decided he was going to run it, and it's kind of just like, what? Some wild dude's gonna go run across the Sierras and do this. So my grandfather, who was the medical director for the horse riders, he decided to follow Gordy as well as he ran it, and uh, Gordy ended up running it, and then became the Western States 100-mile run. And I think for me, I know my dad will go kind of into that story a little bit more, but growing up with that background, and both my dad as a coach for high school for track and cross country, that was a huge thing for me growing up. It was just kind of immersed with at a young age with high level athletes that he was coaching that were always older than me, but I was just kind of part of that and seeing what some hard dedication could do. But most of all, it was just really enjoying it. We would go out and do crazy runs growing up, and a lot of the times on the weekends it was, all right, what are you going to go do this weekend? And a lot of times for me it was, well, I might go do an 8 or 12 hour adventure with my dad out in the mountains and climb a peak or link some ridge line up, or just go explore the mountains around Challis. And that is where the fun really began for me. And I loved running fast and doing cross country and track, but it was the longer stuff and just getting out in the mountains, because you weren't worried about pace or even the distance or what place you're gonna come in. It was just getting out there and exploring. And that's the deep down where it really started for me. And then being able to immerse myself into the Western States every summer, going out there with my dad, with my grandpa, following that along. Really, that kind of sets the stage for me in the enjoyment of all this craziness.
Nice. The adventure.
The adventure, it is. It all starts somewhere, which is wonderful. Yeah, we're gonna dive into that more too. But Paul, yeah,
Paul, what about you?
yeah,
Yeah. So following up on that, you got to remember when I grew up and when Cody talked about my dad in the Western States, this was in 1974. I know you guys think that's 100 years ago, but it wasn't. But it was the start of kind of running in America. It was Steve Prefontaine, it was Jim Fix, it was Nike getting started, it was Asics getting started. It was the boom of running, and all of a sudden you have my dad out here, who is a very well respected doctor and a doctor for the high school football games here in town, and the doctor for the riders on this Tevis Cup ride, which originated in 1955. The horses rode across the Sierras. And then you have this wild character that shows up, and you guys, and maybe some of your older audience would know who Grizzly Adams was. It was a TV show back in the day. Gordy Ainsley's Grizzly Adams of the 1970s. This kind of wild, crazy lumberjack, and that's what he did for a living. He cut wood and lived with his mom. He decides he's going to run 100 miles. And nowadays, that's commonplace. People are doing it all the time. Back then, that was an insane concept. That was undoable, unimaginable. And for him to show up on the start line in 1974, and then it was called Squaw Valley, and since they've changed the name, and here he is with the horses, and everybody looking at him like he's just on another train track. And my dad wondered, just was fascinated with it. And I was a little kid. I was 7 years old at the time, standing there with my dad, couldn't give a rat's ass about Gordy running this race. It was all about watching the horses. And he takes off, and this was before there's aid stations every 10K. And he had to go stash water and food along the trail in the weeks ahead of time. And 23 hours and 42 minutes later, Gordy finishes with the horses. And nowadays, that's, you get a belt buckle and everybody pats you on the back, and you make 4,000 Instagram posts saying how great you are. But then that was just a feat that was unbelievable, that nobody thought could be done. and it kind of, I'm very partial to this race and to Gordy and the history, but that kind of really kicked off ultra running, the concept of wow. And then it mushroomed into a race, and it exploded into to me, the greatest 100-mile race on the planet. People will argue because there's now probably 100-mile races, but that's what started me, running. And Gordy was the type who would show up here at the house. He's just kind of different. He'd have a pair of boxer shorts on, and he'd have the fly stitched together, and he'd say, "You want to go for a run, Doc?" And we'd go for a run, and I'd ride the bike at the time. I just grew and morphed into a tradition that carried me. And then I ran it when I was 18, and then got involved with the sport. And it, if it's not a passion, it's not something you're going to do your whole life. And I think both Cody and I would say it's a passion for us, not just the running, but the enjoyment of being outside.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that is fun. I've recently really started obsessing over ultra marathoners because I find it wickedly interesting. We like endurance sports. Our mode is typically bicycles, right? But that listen, you guys will run forever. It's so long to be running for. But then I think about it, I'm like, man, if my feet could take me that far, it would be a really cool way to spend some hours, out and moving your feet, seeing how far they're going to take you, seeing what your eyeballs see while you're out there, see if you can do it. I think it's just wickedly fascinating to me that people, and it had to be really weird to see a dude line up with the horses. Just a surreal moment, because you are all right. Nowadays, you'll see people line up, and I'll read about the runs, and there's hundreds of people that start. But to see, it had to be really weird to see one dude with a bunch of horses.
I think I don't even remember. I remember I have the pictures when I was there, but I don't. I don't even remember it. And then I remember the first real race, which was 1977. That was the official race where we had this huge crowd of 15 runners that showed up, and
Oh,
3 of them that finished, one of them under 24 hours, and 2 that didn't quite make it but finished. But yeah, it's pretty special. And for us, it's not just running. And Tiffany, for me, we're out at the site when I worked with you there. Remember, I lived in Challis, so I got to, or I had to, one, however you look at it. I got to drive past the Lost River Range twice a day, every day, and look at those mountains. And we can get into talking about how near and dear that mountain range is to Cody and myself and the things we've done there. But it's not all about running. Sometimes 8 and 12 hours is 11 hours of brutal hiking and climbing and 1 hour of running, because you just want to be done and get back to the truck.
Those mountains are pretty vicious. Pretty vicious. Just a little bit of exploring that we've done into them. Yeah, it's apples and oranges compared to what you guys have got into. But I respect it so much because they're so massive. And every time we go by, I'm like, man, I could spend time here. It just draws you in. There's something about it that just draws you in. The mountains, and just, I call it breathing wild air. Like, I just need to get out. I need to breathe some wild air. I need to get in touch with nature. And you're right. It's not just about running, but running's part of it. The moving on your feet, the exploration, the getting in tune with all of that. But that's kind of the groundwork, right? For how you guys have really got to where you are. It started with a passion, with getting out there. And Paul, I love the history and how you're ingrained in the ultra sports, because it's such a unique perspective. And then to see that in Cody, it's so unique. And I love that part of your guys' story and the legacy within the Lynn family. I mean, it's motivating, right? It's motivating to me to think, well, shoot, riding a bike for 100, like we were just talking earlier, Ali and I were like, hey, well, do you want to ride on our trainers, indoor trainers, right? Ride 100 miles. And to me, we can do that in like 5 hours or so.
That's a cakewalk.
And that's awesome, but it's 5 hours. You're talking about 24 hours or,
Okay. What's the longest you guys have been traveling on your feet in a single time yeah, you know what I mean. How long is the longest you've been on your feet?
Whether that's running
Out
or
and about.
hiking or whatever.
The
Cody,
longest for me is 310 miles.
Good Lord.
About 4 days, just over 4 days.
In a row?
Yeah. Some sleeping in there of just maybe an hour, 30 minutes here or there, just survival. Yeah, you see
Damn.
wild things in something like that.
Some
What?
of them probably imaginary.
Like
Oh yeah,
hallucinations?
maybe like half of them.
310 freaking
I didn't
miles.
know that. That's insane.
I didn't know that at all. That's so far. What kind of run was that?
Yeah.
That was actually FKT, or fastest known time in northern Minnesota, and it's just this continuous trail. Decided to do it and go see something different, and it's gnarly. And some of the trails in Idaho don't even compare to that, and it was just really cool to experience that. But I think if I were to do it again, I would do it over the course of like 7 or 10 days, just to
Yeah.
really enjoy it and not suffer as much. But one of the things, just being able to test the body, and I know my old man will get into this some, but no, that is not great for the body. The feet
Oh,
and the legs and everything take a huge toll. And for me, one of the biggest things that took the biggest toll was mentally. Just like, I'm done. I was kind of destroyed the rest of the year, not wanting to do a whole lot other than maybe just go summit some peaks or something. But you're just deep down, it takes a lot out of you, and it's how many times do you want to do that to yourself and
mhm,
stay injury free too. So
mhm.
it's really hard, and you have to, there's a fine line with a lot of this, and we're talking long distances, but you have to be really careful with it, just to stay on top of everything and not get injured, and most importantly in my mind, keep the head in it for the training and the racing and the enjoyment of it. Because I train high level and very hard, but have a lot of fun with it, and you
Yeah.
got to do that from short distances all the way to the long, super crazy ones.
Yeah.
What about you, Paul? How long? What's the longest you've been out and about?
so I'm going to put a quick caveat, and then I'm going to come back to it. That
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily proud of, or I think it's a wise thing to do to the body, like Cody said. But
Yeah.
I did somehow, somewhere along the line, someone decided that a 100-mile race wasn't quite long enough, so they came up with the Tahoe 200, which was a race around the Tahoe rim through the mountains all the way around in a continuous loop. The first one they did, and I, for some reason, thought that was a really dandy idea to go do. And so it was 210 miles, and it was about 80 hours worth. And yeah, I mean, you try to plan some sleep in there. I mean, it was like, hey, I'm gonna go 60 miles and rest for 2, and I just couldn't go to sleep. So it was like, we're wasting time. If we're not moving, the clock's running, we're wasting time. So I didn't really sleep for those 3 days. And day 3 involved hallucinations, some pretty cool ones, pretty wild ones, talking to people. For the last 2.5 days, I had somebody, a pacer, someone with me the whole time. Cody was with me part of it, and some other friends, just to kind of make sure I didn't step off a cliff. Coming down the Truckee River in the middle of the night on night 3, I saw a pirate ship right next to me, and if you'd have told me to step onto it, I could have stepped on and taken a sword and battled pirates, and it was as real as us talking. But like Cody said, even 100 miles, it's
Yeah.
not something that's necessarily good for the human body. And my dad would say that too.
Mm.
You're going to damage yourself. You're just trying not to injure yourself when
Mhm.
you run far. So to people that are listening, and you know, kind of two-faced in the same way, I train folks to do this and I'm not recommending it. You got to be real careful, because if you, the worst thing you can do is find this high and enjoyment and satisfaction from running or climbing or biking or doing anything that you're passionate about, and then you get hurt, and then you can't do it, and you go into a hole here and physically. And so you got to be real careful. I always tell my runners that I coach now, you have this basket, and there's only so many 100-mile runs you can do in your life. Here's your basket of hundreds. Choose them wisely. And if you start drawing from that basket too much, you're going to run out. You're going to get hurt. So, and that can back up into 100Ks even. You got to be smart about how often you're going to go push yourself into the hole that deep.
Yeah, I mean, because what's the okay? Because this question isn't really fair, but because there can't be an average 100-mile time because the courses can change so very much. But let's say, what's the quickest and what's the longest? You know,
Yeah, I mean,
time-wise. I mean, it's a lot of hours to ask your body to be pumping blood at an efficient level, just even, at an elevated level. It's
yeah, you could run it 13 or 14 hours on a fast runnable 100 mile, or like a hard rock 100. I mean, you're up into the 30s, up into the 40 hours for some of these wild 100-mile races, and just courses are so different. And maybe some you're running for 95%, like a Western States for a lot of people, compared to some of these mountainous ones like a UTMB or hard rock that have 30 plus thousand feet of elevation gain throughout them. So yeah, big difference, and it's always
yeah.
hard to compare, but you're training almost completely different between the two, because yeah, maybe you're working, I mean, we're talking a lot about running, but sometimes you're practicing just hiking a ton, and that's where growing up in Dallas, being able to get up in the mountains or the Lost Rivers, you're able to practice hiking, and that can translate to some of these races very well.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the distinction because you touched on a few things, Paul, and also Cody, because there's a balance between how far you can push your body and you're suffering, but that moment where you know your body so well without getting injured. And do you have like, is there a distinction, a signal, or is there something that you have where you have that distinction or where you know the difference at this point?
Whew, ask Cody. He's run more longer ones lately than I have, and then I'll answer second.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, there's a fine line, that once you're in these for a while and you start, because it's not necessarily just the racing, it's the training too, because you're trying to just peak and get at this highest level to perform on this certain day or this certain event. So the training, you're kind of on this teeter-totter sometimes during a peak week, and yeah, you totally know, you kind of get some signs, maybe not necessarily injury, but or maybe it's just you getting a little bit tired and you just have to listen and back off a bit or do something a little bit different. But yeah, and that's the hardest thing to do, and that's the hardest thing for any runner, because all we want to go do is do the sexy stuff, and that means going out there and running and seeing big things.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
sometimes what really needs to be done is sleep, eat a bunch, or go to the gym and do some mobility or strength that's not nearly as fun.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just that line of trying to figure out what is the best at the right time. And yeah, I think you do know that, and it's just listening to how the body's responding to the racing and the training.
Hmm. Paul, as a
And
coach, yeah, I'm curious what you have to add to that.
yeah, so I now get to look at it from the other point of view. I don't have a desire to go run 100 miles ever again, but I coach some of the top highest end athletes that do run. And so I get the perspective of seeing when they have little quirks and when they have things going on, and are we strong, and are you strong in your core from your shoulders down to your hips? And so a little different perspective in that is I'm super close to my athletes. Cody and I both coach professionally right now. But I'm towards the tail end of my career where I'm down to I have 7 athletes and that's it. I'm not taking on anymore. They have me till they die if they want me. And I'm very close to them. So I know them extremely well. So you watch for little quirks in the training. And just because we were successful last year in, let's say, running Western States 100 and we're back in it this year, I do not go back in and say, okay, well, 8 weeks out, we did this last year and it worked. By God, that's what we're going to do this year. and our peak run was 3 weeks out, and we're going to do that. I cannot tell you what we are going to do next week for training until we get through this week of training. And because I get to talk to them all the time, I very rarely get through a week of training that I write out on Sunday without changing something by the end of the week. Cody pointed out that it's so much more than running. When we talk about running, there's the strength in your core. And why is that important, especially for trail runners? When you're very tired and you've been out there for 30, 40, 50 miles and you slip on a rock wrong, or you step on a stump wrong, or you turn to look at something and you come off the trail wrong, it's that strength of core that keeps you from really screwing yourself up and getting hurt. And then the mental aspect. Endurance runners are the biggest basket cases. Tiff, I know you were a high jumper at ISU, and you might agree with me, because I was a track coach too, that some of the biggest basket cases on the track are pole vaulters.
Oh,
and
crazy people.
And you, and high jumpers, because you sit there and you think about it too much.
Oh, yeah, I hear you.
I would say endurance runners beat pole vaulters in terms of being basket cases in terms of athletes. So that's a very touchy thing you got to worry about as a coach, is dealing with the mental aspect of this.
Yeah, the mindset. I am so glad you brought that up, because we have this, we talk about this a lot, the mental and the physical game, and you can't have one without the other, right? But with your coaching techniques, and I saw you shaking your head, Cody, as Paul was talking about, like, week to week your training plan. Just because last year we did this, it's not this black and white science that you're just saying, well, today I'm going to do this, tomorrow I'm doing that, and then I'm going to get the results, right? There's so much more that goes into it. But people that don't run or don't pursue endurance sports may not be able to relate to that. But so what does that look like for you guys? So you finish your training plan, and then the next week it's a feeling, it's a connection with your body and yourself and your mind, and then you go on from there. Or how do you guys get from A to B like that?
Yeah, and this is where I think it's constantly listening to an athlete. And I personally have my own coach, so I'm talking with someone about all this. But me personally, with the athletes that I have, it's constantly getting feedback every day. Maybe it's a 2 or 3 mile run. Well, I want to know how things are. Maybe it's a 50K training run. I want to know how things are. And even the strength. And you're just constantly adjusting. And I think this is one of the biggest things, and I've definitely learned it from my dad, and it's different from a lot of coaches, because there's a lot of coaching out there that it's putting a week or a month up at a time. And yeah, you're talking, but it's just not structured for the athlete, and everyone is balancing something. Not everyone is just breathing, eating, sleeping, running, and training all of the time. Everyone has a job trying to balance the day-to-day life, maybe kids, and I think that takes stress, and that takes a big toll on the body as well. So it's seeing where things are. And I just loved what my dad was saying on not comparing to the year before, because a lot of the times in these endurance sports, you want to go back and see if you can do better at a certain race. And can I knock 2 or 3 hours or more off on some of these times at these races? And it's really easy to get caught up in the comparison game, whether it's others or comparing to previous training. And it's kind of where you are right here, right now. And that's kind of my biggest takeaway with training for me, but athletes as well.
Yeah. It seems like you guys both kind of follow a structured, intuitive approach. You have some that wake up and say, okay, I wonder how I'm going to feel. I wonder what we're going to do. But it sounds like you guys have a plan, but then you also take into account what you've done, how you're feeling in that moment. I don't know. I don't know. To me, that just seems like the logical way to progress. It's hard for me to think, follow a piece of paper if I feel a lot different than what that paper says I should do.
I
And
think,
so
go
many
ahead,
times
Coach.
it's there's an event, and most of the time, so many of us endurance athletes are type A people. So you have all these things planned out. You have something 8 months in advance. Well, as an athlete and a coach, you're looking that far, and you have some things, and you kind of know, okay, when certain things should be, but maybe it's within this 2 week time span when you're looking 8 months in advance, when some peak long runs are going to be, or when a certain workout might be. But so you're kind of working backwards, as well as in the present. So you're always looking ahead, but getting the feedback to get you there,
Yeah.
along the peaks and valleys of the training.
Do you think that that mindset has carried you into staying more passionate and having more fun than like a traditional, I'll call it a traditional approach? Is, today I'm going to, this is my training plan. I'm going to do it regardless. Do you think that plays into the ability to do this, not just during your peak performance years, right? But like, this is a lifestyle, right?
Yeah, longevity. I want to be doing this as long as I can, staying healthy. And if that means a week doesn't go exactly as planned, or you have an opportunity to go do something that's going to be a lot of fun or an experience, yeah, it's being flexible and not just, okay, I'm doing this just because I can make a check mark on the calendar of my training. Yeah, it plays a huge role because it's all about this big picture, layer upon layer.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. It's earlier we were talking about something, and Cody, you mentioned the word suffering. And I find this concept really interesting. Whether you talk to a professional runner, and we're talking about endurance sports. So with endurance sports, professional athletes or athletes will say, well, I just have the ability to suffer better than my competitors. And I think, comparing apples to oranges here, but even on a 100-mile bike ride, or we've done, I think the longest we've done is 150. The ability to suffer and stay happy within your human and still enjoy the process is a big deal. But the whole time there's suffering involved, there's pains, there's things, you go somewhere different mentally. But do you think the ability to suffer, and also as father son, like Paul encouraging you to suffer, but you guys both love this. How do you feel about that, to have that like ingrained, well, encouragement into suffering, but you also like you're enjoying it, but how does
Yeah.
that play into your success?
So that has switched. The Paul encouraging Cody to suffer has long ended. When we are in the mountains now climbing together, it is way one sided on Cody encouraging the old man to suffer as as he waits on a ridge or he does a particular route up, telling me that it's okay, and then he's waiting. So point on that. I'll tell you something that I told my high school kids, and I tell um, my athletes now. If you're a distance runner, not even an endurance runner, a high school, a mile or a 2 mile or a 5 or 10K in college, and especially endurance runners, you develop that canny knack for being able to suffer. And sometimes it's like a sick addiction on thriving for that, the pain or the ability to deal with pain or the ability to beat discomfort. And I tell you, that's good, because it's not just the discomfort of running. There's discomforts in life you have to deal with that aren't physical pains, they're mental pains, and you can teach yourself to be better in life, but you have to be careful when to turn that switch on, and there's a time to turn it off, that you aren't always in need of having to push so deep into the well. And I think people struggle with that sometimes, of when it's okay to shift the switch off or even dim it down just a little bit. So for those listening that are getting into the sport, or they're out there doing these endurance sports, that's great. Use that drive in your everyday life, but also know that it's okay to turn the switch off sometimes too.
Yeah, it's a balance, right? It's not, you're not like you were saying earlier, running isn't just about running. Cycling isn't just about cycling. There's a lot more, and to be in tune with yourself and enough to know the difference to when to turn it off and on. I think it's something special that you guys have cultivated within yourselves, because I look at a lot of other athletes, and there's a lot of people that are really good, but they're not really happy and good. And that's one thing that why just admiring both of you, and your legacy and what you do now, is it's just really admirable to see that, because it's something that I wish more athletes had, that intuitive nature and that being in tune with their mind and their body to be able to stay happy and passionate. And you're not just an athlete in college or in high school, right? I think of myself as an athlete. I'm not competing at a professional level, but it's a mind game. It can mess with you mentally, especially like after leaving college. What do you do? If I'm not going to be high jumping, in the Olympics or whatever, or what do I do with my life? And there's that element of being in tune enough with yourself to figure out that difference. And I really admire it because the passion that it shows through. It shows through in both of you, even if you're not bagging all the peaks anymore, Paul, and Cody is forcing you to suffer.
Whoa, time out, time out.
He's still
I
on the peak.
am,
Whoa.
I am still bagging all the peaks. I believe unless Junior here gets his ass moving, I will complete all the 11ers this summer before he does. So
Oh, I'm a little quiet on some of them. He just doesn't
yeah,
know.
Wow, shoot.
yeah.
That's too funny.
I think I'm ahead of him in the 11. I think I got like 20 left. They're
Oh,
gonna
how many are there?
Seriously.
114 plus or
Oh,
minus.
shoot. I had no idea. I had no idea. We need to get out more.
Seriously, we gotta climb some more mountains. We're happy we got all the ones in the Portneuf Valley area. Like we've been to the top of all these.
Yep.
Yeah, but I reckon that's where it starts, right? You start
That's
where you're at.
exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly where it starts. And sometimes it's just right where you live. And that was the back door from my dad's house. It's okay, there's a cool rock up there and it's not even a peak, but let's just go check it out.
Mhm.
That's where it really starts. Just cool things like that.
Yeah, I would say that's kind of where Tiff and I's origin story was. You guys have been Pocatello, so there's the Black Rock area, right? So our origin story was we'd go out there and it'd be like, hey,
Mhm.
you want to go up to that one? Hey, you want to go up to that one? And it was just started to become a thing. And then it turns out mountaintops are really cool because you get up there and no matter how high it is, you get up to the peak and you're like, whoa, this is cool. And then you just see one up higher and you're like, okay, well, I guess we got to go there next. And I guess we got to go there next. And it turns into a
Exactly
fun little game.
that's how the Lost Rivers morphed for us. So we got into this obsession, after all the 12ers, and then Cody set the record on the 12ers.
Yeah.
We it was a matter that, okay, Lost Rivers is our backyard. We want to climb every known summit we can find in every record, every book, anything, and then a whole bunch of places that just look cool that have no meaning whatsoever in books. And so that was kind of a 10-year adventure for us to climb every Lost River peak, free solo, no gear, no ropes, nothing like that. And we did that. I don't know when we finished that, Cody, about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, a couple years ago.
Now that was pretty special. We're talking a lot of running about the Lynn boys in the family, but climbing peaks and being in the mountains is another huge passion. And we don't talk a lot about our fall, but hunting is a very huge passion for Cody and I. Very important, and to his sister Brienne as well. It's a big family thing in the fall. So it all kind of ties together, though, being fit, taking care of your body, enjoying the outdoors. I mean, we live in Idaho, and listening outside of Idaho is a terrible state. It is the smog and the crime and the traffic is just brutal. So there's no need to come here. But yeah, I think it's a passion for being outdoors that encompasses, I think, you guys too, from what.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a huge lifestyle and it all blends together somehow. I mean, even with hunting in the fall, we get ourselves into some major endurance endeavors with hunting and we know how to suffer with that. And that goes hand in hand with the peak bagging or running. So it's all just part of it, just living the Idaho lifestyle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a lifestyle.
At some point, and this is just completely a curious question, because there is suffering. Because to me, suffering is like, hey, this is painful. This doesn't feel so good. Maybe I'm hungry and I don't have any more snacks, or I'm running low on my water, so I know I can't drink as much as I want to right now. Suffering is kind of it's that painful thing. But when you start to suffer, does something in your head kind of switch and be like, yeah, but I know I can do this? And so then does it become enjoyable? And not on the chasing the dragon kind of enjoyable where you're going down a bad road, not that kind of suffering where you're really going to the very edge, but the everyday suffering that really does happen on most endurance days out when you're like, oh man, my knee's kind of acting up. What's happening? Do you guys transmute that and it turns into like, well, this just means we're out here? Or is it something else where you're like, hey, no, this really does suck. And I think it's going to keep sucking.
I think it's just the ability to deal with the suck.
Yeah.
It's like okay, let's say we're packing out an elk and we've got, well, now he can take more than I. So
I was
he's
gonna
got
say
two.
I'll hear about it. About how much his back's hurting, but
He definitely hears me bitch a lot more when we're, in the hell or I'm in the hell. But it's one of those things where, yes, this is going to be a miserable 3 or 4 hours because it's raining and we're out of food and it's dark and we're not going to get out till 3 in the morning. But it's not as, we've done this before, and it's only going to be 3 hours. It's not as bad as the Tahoe 200 or the
which kind of goes back, and it does give you that comfort feeling of, okay, well, I'm just out here, I'm comfortable suffering, and we can do this because you've had those other extreme moments.
Mm-hmm. So Cody, when you're doing races now, so races specifically, when you go to the start line, are you thinking about where you're going to finish, or are you just thinking about, hey, today I'm running?
Uh, I mean, so many times at the start, it's today I'm running, but I've visualized and prepped and know section by section where I want to be. So yeah, I mean, competing to to be up there, and at any given day at a lot of these races, there's 10 to 20 people that could win these things, and it's just trying to put yourself in the mix, and how well can you stay in it mentally. And you can do all this training, but it's also doing the fueling and eating and drinking and all of the puzzle pieces to get there. So it's not, okay, I'm on the start line and now we have 100 miles to go and this is where I'm going to finish. It's just this day unfolding and putting yourself in position and focusing on you in the moment, and then having your areas you want to be at within the race.
Yeah, yeah, because because we talk about, because the thing about going far to me is, there's times when I'm like, wow, that's as far as I've ever gone. You're like, but I think I could go one more mile, and then it's being cautious of, what does that one more mile cost you? I think is kind of where Paul's at nowadays, is yeah, you can do 105 miles, you can probably do 106 miles, you can do 107, but what is it costing you to do that? But I think it's fun once you go as far as you've ever gone. It's kind of like, hey, so can I go further? And
Yeah,
and going further is relative, right? It could be distance, it could be time, it could be a feeling, it could be elevation. There's so many different ways to go further that are more than numbers, I think.
yep.
Yeah.
And sometimes further isn't necessarily distance, but it's an exploration. Further might mean different peaks, or one nice thing with me chasing Cody or my athletes, they race all around the world, and that gives me a chance to focus on, hey, we're going to go to Costa Rica, race down there, going to go explore that, and then I'll go learn those trails. I'll go run and know the courses. That it was funny. We just got back from Costa Rica where he won the Coastal Challenge, and the last night he tells me, I was out with the race directors after the race and they said, your dad is the only gringo that knows this course as well as we do. I go, I take a lot of pride in that, of going to these countries ahead of time, driving all over, running these trails, knowing the course. Last year we did that in Argentina. In a few weeks we're headed to Italy in the Tuscany region to go do a race, and pretty fun, pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's incredible, actually. We talk about this, the lifestyle, right? So we've already kind of touched on some of these things, but it's a lifestyle. It's really unique and I love it. It's probably one of my favorite things about life is you create this lifestyle out of whatever you want to do and you build it. And you guys are really nailing it, I'd say. And it's so fun. But yeah, so now as you're exploring the world on foot, you're traveling to all these countries, both of you exploring these trails, like, how is that really, like, transitioned into, has it always been a lifestyle thing that you've created, or has it something that you're more recently now, it's like, "Oh, shoot, I can do this different way and live my best life," or is it kind of one of the same?
You're up, Lynn.
Yeah, I I mean, I'm fortunate enough that I can say I'm a professional athlete. I get paid to do this, paid to run and train at a very high level and travel the world, so I can pull it off. And also am coaching athletes, but my job is to go to some of these places and race and to see what I can do. And it's just yeah, it's a passion that was created at a very young age, and here I am doing my passion, living in the mountains, literally every single day, and getting to do that for a living, which is, yeah, it's really damn special, and it's, yeah, I never take it for granted, and just what the body can do, because especially with running, there are so many sports out there, but with running, you need a pair of shoes, and you can go travel anywhere in the world, and you can go for a run,
Mhm.
and it's so simple. And to just be able to do that, and see amazing places, eat amazing food, see different cultures, it's just, yeah, it's taken me way more than just racing and results. I've learned so much, around the whole world, and what the world is like because of it, just because of, yeah, a pair of shoes and my 2 feet. So it's,
Mhm.
That's
No,
really
that's awesome because that's what because okay, so we over the last couple of years, so we both kind of we're not run. I wasn't a runner like you guys are runners, like, but I got into it and it was cool. And then in the last couple of years, we started riding bikes more from different injuries and things like that. But then, and I really enjoy the movement, right? But like you said, you don't always have a bike, and it's not really easy to travel with bikes. That's why we went in this year and we're like, okay, this year we're gonna getting back into running because it's so easy to do when no matter where you are. You're totally spot on with you just have to have your feet in some shoes. And the shoes thing is relatively shaky too. If you just wanted to go out and you're on a beach, you can just go run or just go walk, just spend time. I just love freaking moving. It's probably my favorite thing to do. So it's kind of fun to talk to people that equally would if you're like, "Hey, you want to go see if we can top that mountain?" Yeah, let's go do it. It's really fun. Um, okay, so we're getting to the end of this. So we got to think of an appropriate best last question, but I don't know if we have one. We don't have one pre-programmed like a lot of people do. So we make it up as we go, guys.
yeah, it's flowing. It's flowing.
But with you guys, and I would assume that you guys would be fine seeing other people out on the mountains or on the trails. I know alone time is good too and being up there alone, but there's enough mountain ranges. You guys have explored some. If somebody's getting into it and starting to be like, okay, I want to start using my body more, what would you say to do?
I there's this insane thing right now in endurance running, and all of these crazy, we're talking 100-mile races, and it's at this huge boom. I think my biggest thing is, sometimes for me, the best runs, the best things are, maybe it's a 20 or 30-minute run, or a 3 to 4 mile run right from my place, and it's just refreshing, with the goal of going outside and feeling refreshed by the time I get back. Maybe that's a slow pace, maybe that's a fast pace, maybe that's just easing into things, maybe it's just walking. I think it's, yeah, don't get caught up in, okay, bigger and longer is better. I think just take it at what feels best for you, and really have fun with it. And that was one thing that I think really stuck with me at a young age, and I think it sticks with athletes at a very young age. And I was fortunate enough to have my dad, but I think so many athletes at Challis High School were very fortunate enough, because we were very competitive. We did very well racing in cross country and track and field. But one of the biggest things he was always adamant about was having fun. And that means we might be racing one day and just so competitive, but the next day or over that weekend, he would spend a day out of his weekend and take us out in the mountains, and maybe go jump in a lake or go explore a peak. And it's, yeah, it's that ground level of really the enjoyment out of all of it. And that's that's where it's at. And so many times you get caught up in long runs, or, oh, I got to go do this. No, you don't have to be doing that. It's okay, go enjoy it, and find the pleasure that you can within it. And that's my biggest thing, is have fun, and find the ways that you will enjoy it. And maybe that's super long or even really short. So that's kind of my biggest tip.
Nice.
I like that. Paul, do you want to add to that at all?
You want a pro tip here, huh?
Pro tip. Pro tip.
I'll give you a couple. I'm guessing most people that'll be listening to this podcast are not 18 and 20 years old. I'm guessing they're 30, 40, 50 plus. And all of us, I spend my whole life hanging around 20 and 30-year-olds. And in my mind, I can still go run 5-minute miles. I can do that all day long. till I get on the track. And after one lap, I realize I can't. So, be honest with yourself on what your goals are and don't get hurt. You don't have to start off running. You can start off walking. You can start off hiking. And in the endurance world, sometimes I say it's easier to do an endurance race than a marathon because you don't feel guilty when you're hiking up a steep hill in an endurance race. In a marathon, you feel guilty if you're walking, but don't get hurt and start off easy. And it also helps to be accountable to somebody on those days. It's real easy to put something else ahead of yourself, or an event or a stress, or you're running late, or you have a bad day. But to be held accountable, you guys could hold each other accountable. Or one of the things, it's not running related, that I've been doing with one of my athletes. Her name's Natalie. She's well, now I think Natalie's going to be a principal here. She's in Colorado now, but I think we're going on 5 or 6 years now, every single day for the last 6 years. She and I are accountable to each other. We do 100 crunches plus the day of the month. So today's what? The 10th?
11th.
11th. So today is 111 crunches, and we do 20 push-ups plus the day of the month. So 31 push-ups, and doesn't take but 5 minutes. And we use WhatsApp because the rest of the world uses WhatsApp. US, come on, get on board. And we just write a number. 111, 31. And we have not missed for going on 5 years. No, we've missed some days, but we always have to make up for it. So I'd say have somebody that holds you accountable. It's easy if you have a coach. That's easy. It's not easy if you're by yourself. Find somebody that's gonna be with you on things, so that when you do get behind, and you feel you're rushed, you still put yourself first every now and then. My other pro tip is make your bed. The first thing you do when you get up, after you get out of bed, is make your bed. And there's your first accomplishment for the day. And if you accomplish nothing else for the rest of the day, at least you go back to a nice made bed.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
I love that. Yeah, that's a good little words of wisdom pro tip.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. I wore my running shoes today because I figure after we're done talking, I'm be motivated to get my zip on.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna be running on out of here. You guys
You're
are
not
so great.
gonna run down to the Holt Arena and put the bar at 5.6 and go for it.
Yeah, woo, shoot. Yeah, it's funny. Things are humbling the older you get, but endurance sports are definitely somewhere I've found passion, and some injuries have actually set me back from running. But these shoes that I'm wearing right now, I running's my first passion, cycling is second. I've learned to love cycling, but
it took about 4 years for her to be like, okay, yeah, we can go do this. She was a good sport for those 4 years, but now she's like, okay, yeah, I like riding.
Yeah, but I love them both, but I really desire to get back on the horse. So I love the words of wisdom. It really inspired me today. You guys are so great. I could talk to you guys forever about this stuff.
Seriously, but Brian's back here giving us the numbers, like, hey, guys.
Yeah, or clocks a ticking.
Flashing some lights, doing the things.
Right. Do you guys have anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we close out for the session?
Cody?
I think the biggest thing is reach out, find for anyone, any listener, if you have questions on anything, reach out. We're the type of people that are always willing to help and give tips on any type of endurance thing, and it's not always just running. So don't hesitate to find us or message us, and yeah, we like that stuff and want to share knowledge anytime we can.
Awesome. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. And
I feel like this could culminate by us going and hiking something.
Yeah, we should make planning it. Yeah, when we're in Ketchum, or Paul, when you guys are around, I'd love to connect.
You can teach us how to go tap a mountain up there.
Yeah. Yep. Bag some mountains. It'd be sweet. Yeah, bucket listable for sure.
Yeah.
Let you know when I finish the 11ers this summer, and then after that, Cody will let you know when he finishes them.
I see.
There's no competition involved here.
Yeah,
it's just family love here.
Yeah,
good old family love.
A little motivation that goes a long way. Shoot, you guys are the best. And for our listeners out there, if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, share with your friends, and hit these two up, Cody Lind and Paul Lind. They're awesome humans, and definitely worth the reach out for sure.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much.
You good time.
you.
Yeah, we'll see you guys. Thank you to our sponsor, Radon Professionals. Radon Professionals specializes in radon testing and mitigation. Serving all of Idaho and Wyoming, Radon Professionals can help you breathe the healthiest air on the block. For more info, check out our website at radon-professionals.com.